Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another edition of our weekly real estate backstory. My name is Alan Richard. I'm the managing broker here at Maximum Realtor Partners.
My name is Ming Richardson, a compliance broker for Maximum One Realty and Realtor Partners.
And we go over this every week where we kind of try and start off your week with the comings and goings, the things happening in the real estate world. This week, we want to jump right into the entire purpose of this is really communicating with agents. And so we're going to talk about the upcoming 2024 GAR, Georgia
Mid-year
Association of
contract
Realtors,
changes.
mid-year changes. So the mid-year changes came out. They dropped them this week. And so we have the training forms out and that kind of stuff. We're going to be scheduling classes and
Please
trying to
join us.
prepare you. I wanted to kind of run through with you really quickly some of the things that you're going to be seeing here in the new GAR forms, and just give a little kind of. We're just going to kind of give a brief overview. Excuse me. We're going to give a brief overview of what's kind of going over. And so, first thing is the GAR forms have a new set of like all the disclosures that are required from the most recent NAR lawsuits. Those are in there. No big deal. Number two, they have replaced the word commission to either compensation for professional services or just the word compensation in general, which is something that we've kind of been advocating for years. Anyway, we have a new, or not a new one. Let me talk. They have updated the agreement to work with a buyer as a customer form, GAR F-116. But they've updated not only that, but also the buyer brokerage agreement with there's some new language that's been added to all of our customer agreements in here, and
Talks about compensation.
it really does. But it also lays it out in a different manner that a lot of us are not going to be used to. So first thing is like the new thing is compensation to buyer's broker. The buyer agrees to pay. The buyer's broker, the compensation is set forth below, and you can have a percent, a dollar amount, other, that kind of stuff. Then there's a section which says, what about additional compensation, optional compensation from the seller or seller's broker or buyer's broker? Because part of the new rules was that whatever you agree to on your buyer broker, that's all you can make. Well, but what if that seller's offering a bonus? What if it's a new construction and they're doing things like that? This kind of addresses that. And then the other section that's in here is in there about, well, what happens if the seller is offering? Because now we have the opportunity to either there's this new section called possible reduction in buyer's compensation obligation to buyer
Vice
broker.
broker.
And what that means is either, we're going to reduce the compensation the buyer broker shall pay to the buyer broker because it's being paid by the seller, or we're not going to reduce the compensation. Or,
That's an interesting one.
yeah, or that special exceptions, meaning, well, the seller's going to pay two, we're going to pay one, or whatever that may be. So, now you can say either who's paying, what's paying, that kind of stuff. So it does add a lot more options. But for agents that aren't going to be used to this change, it's going to throw you off when you first see it.
Yeah. And
Yep.
so just make sure, have a conversation
Yeah.
with your compliance broker. Ensure that you understand what these check marks are and what it means.
All right. Also, we added in, or not, they added protected period to all the customer agreements now, and that was just try to protect agents. If you do show a property, you should have some sort of protection period in there about when compensation is due, so long as it's done within this amount of time. And the whole purpose in that was you show a property to a
Back to license laws about procuring
yeah.
costs. So if you're the procuring agent, we want to make sure that you are compensated for your procuring costs.
Well, or if the buyer goes around, doesn't chooses to go directly to the seller or to the seller agent,
And that happens sometimes.
you're still due a commission, right? Um, Next one is they've changed the name, and the name is now pre-showing compensation agreement. It's Form F-258, and so this is what you're going to send over prior to showing, and there's a reason for it being a separate agreement, is because and why GAR has decided to not make it as an amendment or a special stipulation. I mean, not make it as a special stipulation, because if it's a special stipulation, then the buyer and seller can negotiate your commission together to change that. And really, your commission is what you negotiate, is what the buyer's
The
agent
client is between the
negotiates
clients.
between the buyer. And so, even though the seller may be negotiating with the buyer and the seller should not negotiate what your fees are. You should be able to negotiate that. And by keeping this on a separate compensation agreement, that does that. And so, best practice is going to, you want to have this done right up front, and it should be attached as part of the contract, but it should not be. But if you do it in special stipulations, then that means that that contract is a
It may be violation license law.
yes.
So,
So you can either do it beforehand or you can do it with the contract, which we're about to show you as well. And and so now there's a new form, which is, if you choose to do it ahead of time, that's the one, the F-258. Now, F-259 is a broker's compensation agreement. And so this is when you submit an offer, you should either already have the Form 258 signed, or now when you submit the offer, you're going to submit that with the new Form F-259. And that is there to, again, to make sure that those protections are built in, that the buyer and seller don't negotiate your commission. And then when you submit offers for listing agents, we've been seeing folks where we're starting to see buyers and buyer's agents sending over offers along with
special step.
compensation and special steps, and listing agents are like, hold on, why are you sending this over? This is why, because of all these changes coming out. You need to know these things are going to be coming across. So even if your seller is not offering compensation, understand that most offers are going to come either prior to showing or with the offer itself in the form of the new F-259.
That's correct.
Now, there are some changes to the exclusive seller brokerage engagement agreement. And the big change here is I have a little bit of concern just because it looks like it might be a little bit confusing. So the first thing is when it comes to actually, compensation to seller's broker. It says, the seller agrees to pay seller's broker the following blank, and it could be a dollar amount, a percentage, could be 9 bananas, whatever it is, flat
Correct.
amount. Then it has the next section, which is optional compensation. And so the optional compensation to the buyer's broker. And so the seller either approves the following compensation that can either be paid by the seller, it can be by the seller's broker, or the seller's broker out of compensation. And the reason that this can get confusing now is because if they say, I'm gonna, I'm gonna pay you 7 bananas for this transaction, that's one thing. But then if they say, okay, you get to share 3.5 bananas,
that's another.
That's another. Or do you not share anything? Or you can, the seller can now say, okay, I'm gonna, I'll give you 3.5 bananas, and then I'm going to offer 3.5 bananas to the buyer's agent on there, kind of thing. And so, there's also a new section which can cause some confusion, and that is if that compensation is conditional. And so we're seeing where sellers are saying, "Oh, I'm willing to pay that for a full price offer." Correct. Now there's a section where the seller can check it off and say, the seller's offer of compensation to the buyer's broker is conditional upon this condition. And so instead of it just being this, well, it's conditional upon my mood, this is the reason. So if it's a full price offer, if it's within 5% of list price, whatever it may be, but then you can list that in there as well. Next change is the instructions to closing attorney. That's just really kind of updating it at the same time with everything else that's really been going on. In the future, expect that we'll only be doing an instruction to a closing attorney if we're not filling out F-258. F-258 or F-259, that really is instructions to closing attorney one way or the other. But if we had to do that, that's the only time that you'd use that. And then as far as like changes to the purchase and sale agreement kind of thing, the only real big changes on the purchase and sale is really just language wise in there to kind of change that in there through how we're operating. Honestly, there aren't. I mean, like, don't expect big changes on the purchase and sale. The changes are on the amendments.
Just remember, the purchase and sale is just basically a whole premise of the entire contract and the explanation in section B. So you'll see some explanation in section B that may be revised to reflect the new section A.
Well, and understand that the reason that they didn't do that is because they didn't want to give the buyers and the sellers the ability to negotiate commissions as part of the contract, even though
Correct.
that makes it very easy.
Well,
Other people are now,
you respect each other's exclusivity as far as what you negotiate with your client up front.
Yeah.
And that should never have been a discussion between sellers or buyer without your consent.
Yeah.
So that's why it is there.
The last two things that are part of the new GAR contract mid-year changes. One is dealing with the state of Georgia. And so now there's this new limitation on foreign entities can't buy properties within 10 miles of a military base. And so we have to make sure we put those disclosures out there. And then security deposits can't be greater than twice the monthly rent now, as far as a security deposit goes. And so, just minor changes that kind of fall in there. So a couple of things moving forward. Now, expect that you're either going to be, like with all your offers, you're either going to be submitting pre-showing compensation agreement prior to showing, or you're going to be using the broker compensation agreement F258 or F259. Expect that that's going to be the best practice going forward on all your contracts. Just like in the commercial world, we wouldn't submit an offer that didn't have compensation included. We're going to see the same thing moving forward on in the residential side.
Yeah.
The other thing that's going to be, the other thing that doesn't get addressed as part of these changes is, what about communicating offers of compensation? Now, let me start off and say we still don't have all the answers to that. And what I mean,
MLSs are doing one thing while the others doing another. So there's not a real firm.
Well, FMLS in the past has said, we don't care, we're not making any changes. Will they change? Will they not?
We don't know.
We don't know yet. And now Georgia MLS is going to be taking away commission and putting in a field where the sellers can offer compensation. Now that compensation could be agent co-op, it could be closing costs. There's a lot of options that can be. Either way, as listing agents, we have to be ready to, like on the listing side, this poses some real interesting, I'm going to say, dialogue situations kind of thing, right? So there's this running joke about listing agents don't answer their phones real good. Look, you're going to be getting a ton of requests from buyer's agents, because now we can't offer compensation show a co-op percent in the MLS anymore. Not least, we don't think we will. We're going to see how it really works out.
MLS, they're going to follow the NAR guideline.
So we can do it, however, on marketing. And so we can do it, flyers, signs, emails, those kind of stuff. We can also do, have it on our website as long as it's only our properties. We can't list another brokerage's commissions out there.
That's interesting on Zillow, though, and the third parties as well.
Yeah, exactly. It can just be part of negotiations. It can be done as part of the buyer agreement. But the whole idea is that when it comes to offering it out there, we're still trying to work out all the details, how that's going to go. We still have until the middle of August when those kind of things are really going to impact. And there's not a GAR form for that. So that's why you're not going to see any of those kind of things really addressed on the GAR form changes. So let's change gears here. And so there's a new report out which talks about the share of they're called super commuters.
Right.
And so super commuters are actually increasing, which is really interesting because,
I think a lot have to do with affordability.
Well, folks are willing to travel more for work. And even though there's a lot of folks who want to work remotely, there's still a lot of people who aren't going to the office quite as much as they did before. We're just seeing a focus where people are willing to move a little bit farther. That's impacting the types of houses and the locations where they do buy their properties. We also wanted to share out with you how much does it actually cost to finish a basement. And so Bill.com went out and they worked out the price on the average price, for a 1,500 square foot, the average cost is 22.5, the high cost is 34.5. But if you have a 3,000 square foot, it's 45,000 to almost 70,000. But the reason I wanted to share this with you is because sometimes our clients just ask us interesting questions like this, like, "Hey, I'm thinking about finishing my basement. What's it really run?"
Well,
Well, this
what
can
they're
give you
looking
some
at,
ballpark.
yeah, this what they're looking at is how much would it cost me to have more space at my own current resident
Well,
versus going out buy a new home.
right. And now this is going to be really highly dependent on what you're doing. If all you're doing is adding a couple of bedrooms and a bathroom, you're probably going to fall in those numbers. We're also seeing where some folks want to go in and put a whole kitchen in and make a
That's
separate.
different,
That's going to be a different number,
right?
right? That's not really
These
going
are
to fly the
averages.
exact same way. So, um, so also, um, you know, basically talking about what's coming up with the economy. I mean, with elections and everything going on, they went out and they asked all the different groups: Gen Z, Millennials, Gen Xers, that kind of stuff. Like, what's your biggest, election issue, kind of thing? And Gen Z, which I found so interesting, rated housing affordability as
And
number
number
one.
one,
Millennials, it's number three.
I know we keep on talking about buying home, but I wonder if that answer is based on rental rate as well. So that's kind of interesting, though.
I mean, but it seems to be the younger the buyer, the more important it is. It's
On affordability.
when it comes to affordability, and I don't disagree. But our Gen Zs, it's the most important. Millennials, it's like third. Gen Xers, our generation, it's like fourth or fifth. Baby Boomers, it's even farther down the line. But home prices when we bought were lower, right? So I can understand why this is a big deal. And for us, in the real estate world, it is about affordability. Our buyers are willing to be creative when, in order
Or
to
drive a
find
little
those homes.
longer.
We need to be as creative as our buyers are in order to help them achieve their goals here. So, housing also doesn't always look like it always did. And we're seeing where builders are building much smaller properties. Builders are building a ton of townhomes, condos, those kind of things. And we have to make sure that we're not putting our own bias in there, because sometimes some folks would be glad to live in a modular home out in the boonies a little bit, kind of thing, as opposed to not being able to afford it in other locations. So just make sure that we're being as understanding about the needs of our clients, because affordability is a big deal and they're willing to do a lot of things in order to make that home affordable. Now, good news on the mortgage front: interest rates.
Went down just a little bit. Thank
They're back
goodness.
down. They're
Just
heading down. So the jobs report didn't come in that great. Well, the jobs report came in really good, which is not necessarily, which is not good for interest rates, which is interesting. But still, we're back under 7. We're looking at the rates kind of continue to move down. We know that that's going to be a big deal moving forward in here for us. Now, overall, like, how's our market doing? Right now, days on market is still, I mean, you can see that we're still trending. We're kind of historically right in the middle of the pack. We're not doing terrible or worse than we really have been on there. Pending sales, pending sales are actually up a bit, right? We're up almost 3%, which is needed, but it's nowhere near where we really want
no,
it to
and
be.
it's because once
Yeah.
again, come back to the affordability issue.
Well, I mean, if you rate it to where we were right after the pandemic, we're nowhere near that. But you can see that historically, we're really not that far off the mark. Now, Goldman Sachs came out with this huge report about where they're looking at existing home sales to go, and you can see that they're looking at it ramping up over the next several years in a very positive line moving forward. Now, I mean, the big players and they're crunching lots of data points. I'd like to see it back up into the 5 million range, but it looks like we're heading into a much more. They're
About four
predicting a much
million.
more steady growth in there. Now, what they are looking at really ramping up heavily is new construction, because like whereas if you look on the total sales, it's a little bit flatter. New construction sales, boom, 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 it keeps shooting up. And we keep saying this. It feels like we're a broken record. If you are not actively engaged in the new construction
Arena.
market, if you're not comfortable operating in that space, get your training on. Make sure that you are. There's a lot of great opportunity and potential in this
Absolutely.
segment. You just got to get in and make sure that you're there to help protect and present your clients.
Correct.
All right. So overall housing inventory. This is, we kind of want to show you exactly where how active U.S. housing inventory is. And so inventory is rising, especially here in Georgia. Inventory is up big time. And we're very, very glad to see that. You can see that it's a significant increase. But, and so here in Georgia, overall, active inventory is up by 49%.
That's great.
I mean, we're talking a 50% increase. So for our buyers, we're seeing a lot more opportunities to choose from. For our sellers, you got to make sure your price is right and that you're ready to negotiate in here. Because with 50% more inventory, we aren't in a balanced market yet, but we sure are heading that way. Now, some folks will look at that and be like, well, we're going to see prices really just start to drop. I do think we're going to see prices flatten. However, even though we're up 49% this year, overall, pre-pandemic, here in Georgia, we're still down 37%. So we're still a third down from where we were before the pandemic, just on total number of inventory. So it's a good sign to see that coming in, I feel that that's going to help prices really kind of moderate and level out. Um, we aren't in a place where we have so much inventory that we've made this big shift. We are still down. And if you remember pre-pandemic, it was a seller's market then. And so we're still significantly below that mark. So overall, what we're seeing, kind of transpire as far as overall home prices are not going down. What you will see is a pretty much a flattening. You can kind of see Case Shiller as far as like what are they expecting moving forward. They're looking at stuff in that 4 to 5% range, which is historically normal. It's nice to be normal, right? Just a solid, steady property value appreciation, and somewhere in the 2 to 5%. I kind of see us moving forward with that. And so as it stands right now, currently it was at 1.1% month over month, 5.3% year over year. They're looking at for year to date in the U.S. Now this is a national number, 3.4% property value appreciation. Now here in Georgia, we're still running about 7.5%, so we're still running a little bit hotter than that. However, as far as like they also share out the list of the markets at risk of a home price decline. And the second most likely top big market in the United States is Atlanta, just because we see a lot more inventory coming on. I mean, with 50% more inventory, that's one of those things that kind of throws everything off. Now we're still well below, but it does show that we are seeing signs of the market flattening off for us here, which especially for our buyers and talking affordability, it's a really good place for us to be. Overall, though, median list prices are median list price. It is basically nationwide, it's flat. However, the median list price year over year in Atlanta actually dropped by 1%. So again, that's the same thing that we were just kind of talking about there. Now, as far as on the investor world, and so they list the top 10 markets with the highest share of institutional ownership. And guess who's number one?
We are.
Woo! Not really, but it's still, it is a significant number. Now, what this represents single family rentals. This is not apartments. Yeah, this is not apartments and multiplexes and that kind of stuff. It just shows that we have a lot of investors still operating in our space. And, that rental market in the Atlanta area is really, really good. We really want to encourage folks to move away from paying the investors rentals and making their profits and start getting
building their own legacy and
exactly.
Having their own equity.
Yes, exactly. Spot on. All right. Now this week, we've got our sales meet, our monthly sales meeting. That's going to be Tuesday, and that's going to be in all of our offices this next week. So please come in and join us. We don't care who you're with, but come in and get the information. We do try and make it a really positive experience. So we encourage you to kind of join us. Don't forget, we have accountability every Monday morning. In addition to that, on Wednesday, we have contracts offer and acceptance. That's going to be in our Noonan office on Wednesday. And on Thursday, we have license law in Espanol. So this is license law. So this will cover your license law requirement, but it will be held in Spanish. And so this will be done in Spanish, the whole class. If you don't speak Spanish, you can come, but you won't know what's going on because
Well,
the
defeats
class
the
will be taught.
purpose.
And we just want to make sure that we are offering, you know, everything to everyone just to help them make sure that they are educated, know what's going on. And if you are a fluent Spanish speaker and English is just is your second language, this can help you to kind of understand. So I hope you guys have a great week. If we can be of any kind of service, please call, text, smoke signals. Deuces.
Thank you and have a great Monday.